Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for our webinar today. I hope in the current difficult situation, everyone is doing well. I'll ask my two colleagues who are joining me for the presentation as well if they could turn on their web cameras and unmute themselves as well. I can see an LL and an LM, so I'm hoping that is Lisa and Lisa. There's Lisa Martini. Hello, Lisa. How are you?
Hi, I'm okay. How are you doing? Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you loud and clear, and I'm hoping that the LL might be Lisa Lagerquist from St Mike's. If not, we might have to delve into my knowledge of St Mike's a little bit later on. Lisa, all the way from Vermont, are you there?
I am.
There we go.
Just had a moment. My ears to the right, headphones, and I am live.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So welcome, everybody. We have our panel and hopefully the session that we're able to offer to you at these quite challenging times will be useful. So our topic today is understanding fit in US admissions. For those of you I don't know, my name is David Hawkins. I am the founder of the University Guys, newly plural, and we support schools and students, mostly based in the British Isles, with international university applications, and offering sessions such as this is a large part of our remit. So that is me. I'll ask Lisa L, first of all, to introduce herself, and then Lisa M to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Morning here in Vermont. I am the Associate Director of International Admissions at St. Michael's College in Vermont, and I've been doing this for about 8 or 9 years now, I guess. And I also have 2 children who have gone through the college search process, so I've kind of seen it from both sides.
Hi, everyone. My name is also Lisa. I'm an Assistant Director of Admissions at New York University. I'm actually based out of the London office. But I'm an Abu Dhabi specialist, so you'll see at NYU we have several campuses, so I work exclusively with the Abu Dhabi campus on admissions, but also do a lot of work for the rest of the campuses, work mostly within the UK, Ireland, Switzerland, and also France.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lisa and Lisa. So the format we're going to work through today is I'm going to give a bit of a general overview about the role that fit plays in US admissions and a bit about what fit is. And then we'll see that actually how that rubber hits the road, to use an Americanism, by hearing from my 2 wonderful colleagues about their institutions and what they're looking for and how fit plays out in that element. And then I'll wrap that up at the end. And as most of the attendees on the call I know are counsellors, we can try and also use the chat function, if I can remember to turn it on properly, for some question and answer at the end. So the idea is to wrap this up within the hour. So we're going to start with me talking about the college choice and how this process works in the United States. And it's something which is a very different part of the university admissions process in the US from almost every other system in the world that students, families, and schools might be used to dealing with. It's a much more involved process. It takes a lot more time. And I fundamentally believe that key to a successful admissions process is for students to make wise choices at the start about the type of institution that they're looking for. 2 questions that I pose regularly, and those of you on the call who've asked me to give a talk in your school about it will have heard me ask these, are 2 questions which a lot of students kind of overlook in this process when they're looking for college in the US. A lot of students and a lot of parents will start off with the idea of, I'm going to go to America and I want to go to an Ivy League university, because they've heard of the term Ivy League. And actually, they may not be able to give much more depth behind what is the Ivy League. I was recently having a conversation with a family I'm now working with, and the dad insisted that their son had to go to an Ivy League university, despite the fact that he couldn't name all of the universities that made up the Ivy League, which probably should have given me an opening that I could have told him that some wonderful institutions were Ivy League. But it's a really misused term when students are looking at the US. The Ivy League is a sports conference, for those who don't know. It is 8 universities who, for various historic reasons, shared similar characteristics, one of which is world-class academics, but other things that meant it made sense for them to play sports against each other. The original group of universities that wanted to do this was actually only 7. They tried to find an 8th. Colgate was one option, but it was too far away. Rutgers was another option, but it has a public university status as well. And Brown was the one that was settled on. And so that's how Brown moved from being a pretty good university to within the echelon that it inhabits now. But it is not an academic designation. And so when students are talking about fit in the US universities and they say, I want to go to the Ivy League, what I hear, and I think what other advisors will hear when someone says that, is a student really saying they don't really know much about this process, because the experience a student would have at Brown is fundamentally different from the experience a student would have at Columbia. And it's very hard to be a student who succeeds in both of those processes, because they're looking for different kinds of students. So the first reason I ask that question is to say that you might want to go to a quote unquote good US university, but good extends to a significantly greater number of institutions than just the Ivy League. And that comes into the second question, which is how many students are in each year group at US schools right now. So at the moment, in every single year group in the US, we're looking at between 3.5 and 3.7 million students. Now, that's a vast number of students who are going to be leaving high schools in the US every single year, who are going to have to go to a lot of universities. And so when we're looking about, again, good, in inverted commas, for a US university, we will mean different things. And a university system which is having to take that many of students, even the top 10% of students coming out of high schools in the US every year, however you define that top 10%, is a vast number of students, and therefore they're going to go to many, many more than just 8 historic colleges in the Northeast United States, which have about 22,000 student places each year. So it's a much bigger system. So when students are choosing between universities, they need to understand that good means something different. And these are some statistics from the last cycle. We're just now getting statistics the last couple of days for this cycle, but these are the admissions rates from universities towards the hyper-selective end in the US, and there will be name brand universities that most students can say in there, and you look at the admissions rates and you think, gosh, that's selective. When we talk about a university taking 1 in 20 of its applicants, that dwarfs most things in the UK. But there will be universities on here that many students would have heard of, places like Bowdoin, Colby, Pitzer, Williams, Vanderbilt, Rice, which are not necessarily names that trip off the tongue easily in the UK where we're talking about good universities. And yet these universities are, in some cases, more selective than the Ivy League, and by some considerable margin, more selective than most universities they're going to face in the UK. So good means something different in the US when we're talking about the scale of the sector. Good also means something different in terms of the onward outcomes. And the reason why this slide is hard to read is deliberate, to just show that there are a huge number of universities on this list. Now, this is taken from Harvard Law School, so the postgraduate law school at Harvard, showing that in the 2019 cycle, they admitted students from 185 different universities, explicitly stating that going to get a degree from a university in here can make you good enough to go to study law at someone like Harvard. And that's, again, a really important thing when we're talking to families about fit in the US process, because I think sometimes we can be tricked into thinking about things in the UK mentality, where really students try to go to the quote-unquote best university they can get into. Particularly for students who are maybe home students in the UK, there is no financial real difference in terms of going to one university over another. But in the US, there really very much can be. And students will choose to go to a university that may be significantly closer to home, maybe much more cost effective for them, knowing that actually there are still pathways onto elite, world-class, name brand, good, in inverted commas, universities from a local university or a university which may fit them better. And so this hopefully is really reassuring when students and families are talking about this, that they cannot take their UK understanding of how you pick a university and automatically translate it to the US context. That large numbers of very talented students who go on to hugely successful careers, possibly going through an Ivy League or an Ivy-like university, will have gone to somewhere that has probably had mentioned no more than a dozen times in the entire UK each year. So it's about fit. This concept of how students will fit a university, the idea of being that well-made jacket that fits a person quite nicely, or indeed the round peg fitting into a round hole. But it's academic fit and it's cultural fit, and I want to unpack those for you for just a few minutes. The academic fit is something that's, again, very confusing for a family who might only be used to the UK model. And the question that I tend to ask, and I would encourage advice on the call to ask students, is this: what do you think you'll study if you go to MIT? Most people will go engineering, physics, maths, computing. Yeah, that's what I'm going to study. I'm really good. I'm taking A levels in maths, further maths, physics, and chemistry. I want to go to MIT. And their jaws drop sometimes when I show them this bit of information here, that actually the MIT curriculum includes a significant amount of humanities, arts, and social sciences. Students who study at MIT in their Bachelor of Science degree, whether they are majoring in physics or computer science or economics or even music, still have to take classes in history, in literature, in foreign language, in creative arts, because that's how a US degree works. MIT actually take this a step further because in their admissions process, they insist that one of your references from a teacher has to be from a non-STEM teacher. So MIT, in order to fit their academic curriculum, students need to not necessarily be that maths, physics, and chemistry kid, but maybe maths, physics, chemistry, and something else. Maybe they're an IB student and actually they've kept visual arts in their mix there, or they're taking history at high level as well as maths and physics. The MIT needs STEM students who also do other subjects as well. And I'll say with my own academic background, MIT also has a pretty awesome history department. So it's not necessarily what students think they're going to study. And particularly for those in some fields like engineering, they can sometimes be really surprised when they start to look at US universities that I want to study engineering and I'm not actually going to do a class called engineering at the US potentially until maybe the end of my second year, if not into my third year at some universities, because they haven't seen how they might fit that curriculum. And I know some of you may have seen this slide before, but I do want to give a little bit more information about it. When we're talking about a system here of how a degree is structured, that the UK model is very much you apply for a subject and you are studying that subject. It's final assessment, and the analogy that I tend to use is it's a set menu. If I'm going to want to just study history, I'll apply to just study history. If I want to just eat Italian food, I will go to a restaurant that only serves Italian food. But the US degree structure is like a buffet, that you can go somewhere and pick and mix entirely what you want to do. So in my example on the screen now, a student who's going to say major in history, that on average at most US universities may only be a third of the classes I would take over the course of my degree. And then those other 2/3 then comes where academic fit is really important, because a significant chunk of those other 2/3 is going to be things that a university says you have to study. So like we've just seen at MIT, there will be requirement to take classes across a range of academic disciplines. There are some historic colleges, Columbia is an example, where students have to do a swimming test in order to graduate. And every university will do those slightly differently. So if we take my restaurant analogy to its extreme, if you are a student who wants to really, really eat Italian food, you wouldn't go to a buffet that doesn't offer you Italian food. And equally, if you are a student who absolutely hates the idea of even smelling Thai food, you wouldn't go to a buffet where that's going to be on offer. And so students, when they're looking for academic fit in the US thing, need to go, well, what do I want to take or what don't I want to take? And then start to understand the academic requirements of the university, how its degree is going to be structured, so they understand how they might fit it. And just to show where this can be quite different, I'll bring up the curriculum from Brown. Brown is very well known for its open curriculum. It has no core curriculum. It has no distribution requirements. Students have flexibility to take really whatever they'd like to do. So actually that student who might be just wanting to study physics and not take any classes in literature or languages or social sciences may actually be a better fit for Brown, which possibly doesn't have the reputation in popular culture as being a really techie school. Then they might be better off at Brown than they would be at MIT. So students need to understand that really the academic fit is a fundamental important here. The difference between Brown and Harvard and Columbia and NYU and St. Mike's and Oberlin and Pomona and places isn't just the ranking of the university and where it is in America. Fundamentally, the students' day in, day out academic experience will be very different depending on the colleges that they go to. And then just to touch on one other aspect before I hand over to my colleagues to give a little bit more information, it's also the kind of community that we're talking about, that within them, touching 4,000, 4,500 US universities that are out there, depending on how you define them, you can have vastly different student experiences. 3 examples on the screen now which explore that. I've got in the middle here University of California, San Diego, a great university, a really top-ranked university, but a university with a public commission within the state of California. And so a student going there as an international student is going to be mixing with a lot of people from within the local community. People who may be living at home, people who may be commuting into the campus, and people who might be having jobs and other things going on in their lives at the same time. That's a very different community from someone like the University of Michigan. Here is a picture of their big house, their stadium. It's an American football stadium, though my picture here has them playing ice hockey on it. But we have a 110,000 seater stadium, and the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor is a huge focus for that community, and the whole sports thing that goes with it, not just the football, but the basketball and the soccer and other things, is a massive part of life there. You might want, the third picture here, a historic leafy campus in the northeast of the USA with beautiful old buildings, with a really tight-knit set of community. But this is Wellesley College I'm showing you here, and Wellesley College, as some may know, is a women's college. So again, as well as the academic fit, students need to look at the culture and the ethos of a university and see also, do I fit that? So there's an awful lot to take in here, and hence why students really need to spend a considerable amount of time researching the universities they're applying to, so we can work out where they're going to fit. My final point then is just also to explain that we have a difference between colleges and universities. You'll hear a little bit more about the difference when my two colleagues speak. I use these terms interchangeably, a lot of us do, but there is actually technically a definition. A university has an undergraduate bit, a postgraduate bit, and even professors doing a lot of research. So students getting bachelors, getting masters, getting PhDs. And that's what universities mostly around the world are. But however, the US also has colleges which are only doing that undergraduate bit as well. A lot of the colleges are phenomenal institutions at the very highest levels, are more selective than some of the name-brand universities you might have heard. So it's not really a trading down for students, but yet another example where students need to understand how they might find fit in the US admissions process. Okay, that is enough from me from now for rambling on. I'm going to hand it over now to Lisa Mortini, who's going to give you some information about how this looks when we consider NYU.
Thank you, David. Can I just double check with you a little bit of housekeeping? How do I get to my next slide?
Good question. Just ask me to move the slide on at night, and I'll do so.
Fantastic. So go ahead. Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. So it's a pleasure to be with you today to talk a little bit about NYU and also this idea of fit. I really like what David is talking about because I think it's so important for us in the admissions team as reviewers of applications. When we read an application from someone who's exhibiting all the different signs and all the different elements that we want to see in an application that showcases good fit, we are relieved. We've done our job, you've done your job, it's fantastic, and this is where we meet in the middle. So what I want to talk to you about today is, of course, about NYU, but also about this idea of academic fit and cultural fit and what we stand for, and is NYU right for you, is what we're going to try to establish today. So let's just get to the next slide, David. Thank you. Fantastic. So some of you will know NYU. Some of you may have been to NYU, actually. If you've been to New York, raise your hand. If you've been to Washington Square Park, which is at the bottom of Fifth Avenue, has a big arch in the middle, you've been to NYU. We are very much a university in and of the city of New York to start with. We are now considering ourselves to be a university that's in and out of the world. And as you can see on this slide, no matter where you are, you're at NYU. It's almost true. We have 3 major campuses where you can actually do your entire degree. NYU, you can see on the left here. We also have Abu Dhabi in the middle and Shanghai on the right. We also have 11 global study away sites around the world. So I personally work out of the London site. We have sites in Paris, in Prague, in Tel Aviv, in Buenos Aires, in Accra, in Sydney, in Washington, DC, and many more. So this idea is that if you are a part of NYU, you are part of a global network. It has to be at the forefront of what you're looking for in your student experience. If you're looking for a very sort of small town, very, I want to say self-contained college experience in the US, this is definitely not what you're going to get at NYU. We're very much in the heart of urban cities. All of our campuses are more or less urban campuses, especially New York. And we're very much into giving you access to the resources around the campus. So we've chosen those cities specifically to allow you to learn not only in the classroom, but also in the world around you. And so you need to be sure that this is okay for you. This idea of fit, again, is important. Not everyone is okay studying for 4 years in New York. You know, we are in the heart of the city. It's busy, it's noisy, it's a bit crazy sometimes, and you need to make sure that this is an environment that's right for you. And when you're looking for colleges in the US, think about that as well. Size. Do you want to be in a smaller college? You want to be in a big institution? We have 50,000 students at NYU, half undergrad, half postgrad. That is a lot of people. more or less in 3 main places and then across the rest of the globe. So you need to make sure that you're going to be comfortable within this environment. So size, location do matter. And that is really important when you start doing your research, to start at least shortlisting some locations and some types of universities that you're looking for to begin with. I think I can get to the next slide, David. Thank you. Super. So I like this slide because, first of all, there's a lot of movement here going on, and I think that's what we want to represent about NYU, and especially about the student life at NYU. We are looking for students who, yes, have had academic success, and I'll talk about this more in a minute, but we're looking for students who are very open, very curious, who have a sense of excitement and are very proactive. We have a lot of student clubs and organizations. We have a lot of labs that the students can do research in. I'm thinking especially about my students in Abu Dhabi that I work with a lot. They have access to incredible research labs. They have an MRI machine, they have theaters, they have a music recording studio. So we want you to be hands-on with your learning. When you're looking for an experience, a university experience in the US, think about that. Think about, what are you going to have access to? Who's going to be studying with you? Who's going to be challenging your point of view on a day-to-day basis? Who do you want to join a club with? Would you like to, maybe create your own club? We're trying to give you these opportunities to do this at NYU, and we're very lucky that we have a fantastic student body that is one of the most diverse in the US. We actually, if you are, not from the US, we actually are the university in the USA that enrolls the most students from around the world. So we have about 25% of international students in our new class every year. So something for you to think about as well is, who are you going to be studying with? What is accessible to you? And that understanding of the institution is going to help you really understand, are you the right fit for NYU? Are we the right fit for you? Let's get to the next one, David. And so David talked to you about academic fit, and that is obviously very important. So you saw in an earlier slide, we roughly our acceptance rate at NYU is about 16%. Actually, in NYU Abu Dhabi, it's about 5%. So it's quite a competitive landscape that you're looking into getting into right now. So we will be looking at our students who are demonstrated academic excellence in secondary school, high school, because you will be in classrooms with incredible teachers. So people who have chosen to work with us for so many years, to do research with us, to bring their own experiences from the real world into the classroom, and really have this with you, I would say, in a smaller, intimate setting. So yes, of course, like every university, there'll be large classes in a lecture theater. But really, I think we had 1 to 10 faculty ratio to students. So it's actually not too bad. And even for a large institution like NYU, you're going to have an enormous amount of contacts with faculty. And so if you may be from a culture where the teacher is on a pedestal and you don't talk to them and you just listen to what they have to say, maybe an institution like NYU isn't right for you, because we have incredible faculty members, but they welcome your questions, they welcome your challenge, and you're going to have a lot of interaction with them on a daily basis. They'll get to know you and you'll get to know them really well. So, and this is actually really, I want to say, specific to NYU, but I would say that a lot of US universities have a more open door policy when it comes to faculty members. They're much more sort of likely to interact with you as a student. If that is something that you're looking for, then maybe a school in the US would be a really good fit for you. So that would be excellent for you in that way. And maybe the next slide, David. Thank you. And finally, this is not like super short presentation today, but finally, this is one of my favorite slides, really, because this is where we want to take you, right? Through all of these things that we do at NYU, all of our campuses, our 240 different majors that you can choose from. We want you to feel comfortable anywhere and be successful everywhere. So for this, we are going to help you identify what is right for you from the start. So when you apply to NYU, not only are you going to apply to one of our 3 campuses, but also, especially if you're applying to the New York campus, you will be able to apply to specialist schools if you already know what you want to study. So remember what we were talking about this idea of not having to choose your major straight away, not studying everything that you think you want to study straight away. that is perfectly fine as well. So let me explain to you what that means. If you're applying to NYU New York, and maybe you have several interests, so you're not too sure what it is that you want to study yet. Maybe history, maybe public policy, maybe, I don't know, geography. Then you would apply to the College of Arts and Science, and that's our largest sort of college in the New York campus. And this is where you will be able to choose by the end of your second year what your major and potential minors are going to be. But if you're absolutely passionate about engineering or business or dance or music, or if you have several interests that you want to combine, that maybe you will be looking into applying to our specialist schools, and that would be Stern, our School of Business, Tandon, our School of Engineering, Tisch, School of Art, Steinhardt, which is a bit of a conservatory if you want. There's a lot of music courses there, and also Gallatin, which is a school that allows you to create your own major. Throughout these experiences, especially as an international student, we'll give you tools to be able to navigate this, because this isn't easy. There's a lot going on, 240 majors to choose from. That is a lot to choose from. So you'll have academic advisors and first-year advisors that will be there to guide you through this process. We also have in our 3 campuses, incredible team in our Career Center. So that's called the Wasserman Center in New York and CDC in Abu Dhabi, and they have also the Career Center in Shanghai, and they are there to also help you figure out what would you want to do after you graduate. You know, do you want to go to graduate school? Do you want to find a job? Would you like an internship? So we'll, you know, again, guide you through this process, because we do want you to be successful once you graduate. And that's really important, that when you do your research trying to find a school in the US, that you look at what kind of support are you going to get to potentially do internship during your studies? What are your outcomes after you graduate? Okay? All right, so this is really a lot of information in a very, very, very short amount of time. It's a big institution here. So we're going to go to the next slide. And really, this is for you. If you have any questions at all about what we were talking about today, about how to apply to a big school in the US, how to figure out if you're the right fit for that school or not, just send me an email. This is my email address on the screen. I'll be super happy to help you figure out and navigate how you can apply to NYU. Thank you, guys.
Great, thank you very much, Lisa, and a really, really good overview there as well. I know, seeing from the attendee list, we have all the counsellors on the call. NYU is an option all the students have heard of. It's a very popular one, and if I have a student say they want to go to NYU, my question normally back to them is, oh, great, which bit? And that's where it's quite often, you know, as Lisa just explained, for them to understand, so it's more than just being, I want a university I've heard of in a city that I think is cool. There's a bit more to it, and the student who's looking at say, Stern for business or Tandon for engineering is going to have to present quite a different profile in terms of the strength of their maths and potentially their physics than a student looking at, say, the College of Arts and Sciences. And equally, a student who wants Gallatin for individualized study is also going to have to present quite a different profile. So not just fit between US universities, but fit within US universities, if this game wasn't even more complicated than it needed to be. Okay, switching on from one college which I've had the fortune to visit enough, and as well as having 2 Lisas, we also have 2 purple institutions. We are going to look at St. Michael's College, I have to say, tied with Tennessee for my favourite state in the Union, the United States, St. Michael's College. So Lisa Lagerquist, over to you.
Great, thank you so much, David. If you can go to the next slide, that would be great. So I'm really appreciating this discussion about fit, and I think it was great to hear from Lisa at NYU and really think about how different in some ways our institutions are and how similar they are in some ways as well. And I think for us, when we're thinking about fit, it's important to us as well as to the student, because we really want students who are going to be happy and successful at St. Mike's and want to stay. So finding that student that's a good fit for St. Mike's is not just about admission, but about really having our students be successful. So that was a long introduction. St. Mike's, we like to describe ourselves as a small residential Catholic liberal arts and sciences college in Vermont. So right, that tells you things you might want to know about fit, our students. Things you're setting out, you know, when your students are looking, you want to be thinking about scale. Do you want a large university, a small college? You want it residential, so all of our students live on campus. You might think that a Catholic college is not a college for you or your students if you're not Catholic. In our case, we are welcoming to students of all faiths, and I think it's important to look at the different types of Catholic colleges out there. So we were founded by the Edmondites, and their focus was really on social justice. So we're a very social justice college. I would say a more progressive liberal Catholic college. And then I pointed out we are a college, so we're primarily an undergraduate institution, and our focus is on teaching undergraduates. We have about 1,700 students. You compare that to NYU. I think 60,000 is probably closer to the size of the town of Burlington. And so definitely a difference in scale there. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the liberal arts when we get further in. Then I think the other make on this slide is I've pulled out some of the pictures that really represent, I think, some of the reasons that students come to St. Mike's and some that students need factors for them to consider. So the first picture here is actually of our fire and rescue program. We have a fully volunteer student-run fire department and ambulance service on campus, which is a pretty unique thing in the U.S. Actually service the whole surrounding community to about 3 months a year. So that's not even for credit. That's really an extra beyond academic of St. Mike's, but it is a kind of niche thing that sometimes draws students to St. Mike's. The second picture is really about personalized learning and really close interaction with your professors. So we'll talk about that. And I think that's part of being a small school. I took someone kayaking out in the great outdoors in Vermont. So again, Vermont is one of the things that sometimes draws students to us because they are looking forward to the outdoor experience and the ability to be in the outdoors, ski, snowboard, hike, bike, all of those fun things. And then the last picture is a picture from one of our athletic teams. We are NCAA Division II, and that again is sometimes a reason that students are looking. And then to wrap up, kind of tied back to our Edmondite heritage, we've been talking a lot lately about this idea that we are preparing students to do well and to do good. So we're preparing them to go out and in their chosen fields and careers, but also to make a difference in the world. And so that, again, I think back to David's points about culturally, how are you fitting? We are going to offer students a great academic experience, but it's a better fit for students who might be interested in that social aspect or the themes that are in our campus. All right, next slide, David. Thank you. So if we talk about academic fit, kind of going off of David's points, when you looked at David's list of admission rates, we are not a hyper-selective university. And I think that's another important point for counselors and students to know is that there are lots of universities in the US that you can gain admission to if you are just a good, solid student. We do have an honors program for really the top 10% of our students who are admitted, but we're going to offer a great education. And if you have done well in your high school and perhaps are not the top star student, that's great. We are looking for students who are really interested in learning, who are interested in what we have to teach. And our international admission rate was looking like it'll be somewhere around 60% this year. Again, we're not getting thousands and thousands of applicants either, because I think partly students find us because they're interested in St. Mike's. So academically, beyond just doing, having been successful in your high school career, we're looking for students who are interested in the liberal arts. So the liberal arts means that we are expecting our students to study a broad base of subjects in addition to whatever they focus on. So if you're an accounting major, you are still going to take philosophy and you're going to take some science. And we're looking for students who have those interests maybe have multiple interests. You don't need to know what you want to study before you come to St. Mike's, because actually you apply to St. Michael's College as a whole, and once you arrive, you are free to choose whatever you want. We're also looking for students who are interested in discussion-based classes, really having that interaction with your professor, talking in class, sharing their opinions, and students who are interested in kind of an experiential learning experience. So a lot of our classes will have either some interaction out in the community, putting into place what they've learned in the classroom. You can see students here who are out measuring water in the stream with one of our biology classes. Lots of opportunity to get outside. And then our average class size is 18, so we don't have large lecture halls. If you have students who really just want to sit back, take it all in, and then come at the end of the semester and take a test, St. Mike's would probably not be a great academic fit. Okay, I think next slide, David. Great, and then so moving into community fit, because I think that you can find a lot of, there certainly are a whole selection of small liberal arts colleges in the United States. And so beyond having those small class sizes, that interaction with your professors, the residential experience, what else makes St. Mike's different from another college? What other things might students consider? So we talked about the social justice aspect. I think that's certainly a piece that draws students to St. Mike's. We are a fully residential college, which means that all of our students live on campus for all 4 years. This is something that could appeal to students or not appeal to students. So for us, the purpose of having fully residential college is that we are creating a community. And so we think that students learning is not just in the classroom, but it's all those things that happen outside the classroom as well. And students that are looking to have kind of a new tight community, a lot of our international students say it feels like they've got a new family. A small residential campus like St. Mike's is great for that. I think it's also great for international students in particular because we are not a campus where everyone disappears on the weekend because they all go home. You always have people around. You have a place to stay over breaks. You don't have to find your own housing, which can be stressful when you're thousands of miles away. So a lot of opportunities or ways that I think that's great for an international student as well. Also, being in Vermont and part of St. Mike's, we have an environmental focus. We have a new center for the environment. And again, that's something that students might find is if it's something that's of interest to you as a student, being in Vermont at any of the great colleges in Vermont actually is a good fit there. We talked a little bit about adventure sports. So we have, for example, students that come to St. Mike's because they love to ski and they're getting a great education. So for $150 for the season, you can get a ski pass to the local ski hill. You can get transportation on the bus. And again, an example of, I think, where you're looking for what do you like to do outside of your studies, and can you combine that all in your educational institution that you're applying for. And then I think we've talked about athletics and fire and rescue. The other point I would make is Vermont is also just in general a location that can be a draw for students. We think it's a great scale because it's not New York City, but it's small enough that we have a lot of connections between St. Mike's and the businesses in Vermont. Businesses know us, organizations know St. Mike's, and it's a really manageable scale and easy way for students to get out and get connected with internships, research opportunities. And then it's also a very safe place. So if you're worried about your safety, Vermont's a great place to be. All right, I think we can do the next slide. Thank you. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was really how does fit translate to admissions? One thing we talk about at St. Mike's is holistic admissions. So I mentioned that we are a school that you could get, it's not so hard to get admitted to, and we are really looking at the whole person when we're doing our admissions. So we actually have about 5 criteria in our rubric when we're reviewing applications. 3 of those are very strongly academic based. So, you know, what classes you took, your score or your grades in your classes, your writing skills. But 2 of those criteria are more around fit. So leadership roles you've had, what you're engaged in, how we think you will fit in campus, and what you're going to bring and be able to contribute to our classrooms. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to say here. And I think I will point out that we don't require the SAT or ACT. Again, I think that's part of our holistic approach to things. Yeah, so I think to close, thank you. This is a picture of our campus, and you can see that we are a kind of that small residential community. And then what you can't see here is the city of Burlington, which is not too far away, and the lake and the mountains. But I appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you today. And I'm also always happy to answer questions, just like Lisa M. And I think that's the best part of my job, is talking to students and counselors.
Great, thank you, Lisa, and thank you also to Lisa, as well as to colleagues with the same first name, 2 colleagues whose campuses are purple. I also see we have 2 campuses which are test optional, which interestingly seems to be the way the US is going. And for those on the call who follow me on social media, you'll be seeing a regular stream right now of me sending announcements about more and more US colleges in the light of the current coronavirus situation who are relaxing their testing requirements. To wrap this all up then, why does this matter? Quite often I can give this sort of presentation to a group of students, to a family who I'm working with, and the student says, yeah, I get it, but it doesn't matter to me. I just want to go to a really well-ranked university. I want to go to a good college. And they're missing the bit here that we've talked about colleges here with various levels of selectivity, but colleges don't want to take a student who they don't think is going to fit, for the very obvious reason that it's not a good thing to have a kid on your campus who realizes after 3 weeks that they shouldn't be there. But also actually in the sort of slightly more geeky way in it, US colleges are ranked on one of the factors they are ranked on is how many of the offers that they make do they actually convert into places. What is their yield for the offers they put out? How many students come? So universities actually really only want to make offers to students who they think are actually going to come. And you can quite often see you go through this process, and it can be very baffling for families and advisors used to the UK model, that a student who on the academic data points looks extraordinarily well qualified for that university can very easily be denied by that university if the university says, yeah, but we just look at your application, you're never going to come. You know, you're not the right fit for us. And because you're never going to come, why would we have that necessarily count against us in the process? So it's not just a case about students saying, well, I don't care, I don't matter whether I have an open curriculum or a more traditional curriculum. I don't mind whether I'm in the city or I'm in a small town. Well, the universities do care. And a process that I think so many students, and I say maybe from extension a decent number of schools, miss in this process is that choosing places that you fit when you apply and doing a good job of articulating in your application how you fit that college really is the make or break factor, particularly at the very selective end of US college admissions, as to whether students get in or not. I will be starting, I know, in the next couple of weeks to be getting the emails from families saying, my child applied to the US this year, they didn't get in, we're not sure what's happening, but they want to have a gap year, can you help us next year? And when I get those emails and I see the list of colleges the students applied to, I can understand why they didn't get in, because the list of colleges they applied to makes no sense as a coherent group of colleges. And they just applied to places without understanding the role that fit plays in admissions. So fit matters, and it matters a lot. It matters when we talk about the top end, the really sort of name brand colleges, which so many students apply to. Colleagues who've heard me give talks recently will have heard me talk about, I think, the problem that we have, particularly in London and the South East in the UK, of just so many students applying to such a small group of universities that the statistics are really crazy. This is based on my best guesses, looking at lots of data that's publicly accessible. This is just where I think each year we're looking at in terms of the number of students from the UK, so UK educated students are getting offers at some of these name brand colleges. So these are These are tough places to get into when we think about the statistics. And that is an artificially high number because, again, so many students are applying scattergun to places that they don't really understand. So students need to understand that if you are going to be the person who stands out in these very selective fields, if you are not a super talented athlete and you've got a coach talking to you, if you do not have the connections with the university that might give you a hook in another way through legacy through family history, you are going to have to really fit that college and be able to demonstrate in your application that you do if you are going to be able to stand out from these crowd of students who are applying. So colleges use fit in admissions. We've heard the term a few times of holistic admissions, and it's really important for students to understand that someone applying to almost every college in the US is going to be viewed as a whole person. A very good friend of mine, Holly Smith at the University of Sussex, once said in a presentation that the UK wants your head, but the US wants your heart. And that's a really good way of hanging on to it, that being quite open and blunt about it, there are some students who can go to UK universities who might not be the nicest people, but they're really smart and good at that subject. And the universities are actually not bothered about finding out necessarily whether they're really good people. In the US, if you're going to be going to these residential communities, as we've heard from, you need to be a good person who's going to contribute to that campus community, as well as being academically qualified to do the degree. So holistic admissions is going to take into account not just the student's academics, but the context in which those academics achieved and the other things about a student that they're going to bring with them to campus. That comes across in the teacher references and particularly the counsellor references, a really good opportunity for schools to be able to talk about this kind of stuff. If you are a school and you're mostly using the UCAS reference when you are sending these kind of information off, then I would caution you against doing that in future, because this is, again, not about how well qualified is the student to study this subject, but again, about the sort of person this student is as a student in a class and within the wider school community. So the guidance I give when I train teachers on writing references is this is not a formal job application style reference talking about quite dry information, but they should actually think about, they've going out for a beer in an evening with the person who's going to teach the student next year. And that would be a much more anecdotal conversation. It would be a bit more chatty conversation, but actually you're not going to tell that person about, the percentage of times the student was late for class or some relatively dry and probably quite repeatable data about lots of different students. You're going to say, actually, I remember when Johnny sat at the front of the class and it made such a difference in his learning, and he's always there, he's always asking questions. He wanted this great PowerPoint presentation on the Napoleonic War. I was inspired by it. I just love chatting to him about the subject. That's what we're trying to get across here. So a university can see, great, I can see how this kid would be like in my own colleagues' classrooms at our university. And the counsellor reference is also doing that in the bigger sense. What is the kind of person the student has been in your community? Are they the person who's always the first to stand up and volunteer to show a family around? Are they the person who, if someone's pulled out of D team netball on a Saturday, that you can go to that student and they go, yeah, of course, miss, I'll give it a go, I'll be in there. What kind of person will they bring? That can come out in some of the leadership activities students might have had with that. That could be head boy or head girl. It could be just deciding that they want to just help a group of students out quietly in their house in their tutor group themselves. They could have taken the initiative of doing a huge project at school, or they're the sort of person you see, again, just quietly helping people out in the corner. It's people who take advantage of summer activities, of all the things that are going on there, that their summer activity isn't really honing the groove on the sofa and getting really good at typing in the numbers into the skybox. Their summer activity is getting out there and doing something, be that reading, be that there are cultural activities, and particularly in the challenging situation the world may face right now, getting out there and helping the community in its hour of need. So all these factors come into play when we're looking at how students will be admitted to US universities to see what kind of people will there be there. And colleges use the essays that they're setting for students to find out the fit. The essays are designed so that colleges are given the information when reading the application to see, does this student fit our community? So we've got down the bottom here Loyola Marymount University, another Catholic heritage university in Los Angeles, which actually uses quotes from famous Catholics or famous leaders in US history, and then has a question that leads on from them. So the question here is talking about a situation where you have to show intelligence and character. Again, coming into the kind of ethos that LMU wants to have on its campus of people who will maybe in challenging situations responded in a positive way. Georgetown, again, I picked another Catholic school here, Georgetown, talking about what does it mean to be educated? What, it's not just about achievement, it's about becoming an educated person. And when you look at Georgetown's curriculum and the sort of ethos of academics at that college, it's very much about education for a purpose, going out and doing good in the world. It very much comes from a Jesuit heritage of that university. Whereas the first example here I give from the University of Chicago, one of my favorite questions, and University of Chicago every year gives questions that I love. University of Chicago is geekily academic. Students there wear t-shirts sometimes saying it's where fun comes to die. I will put my hand up to being geekily academic. If I pin my webcam around, you would see the wall of books behind me. And these why these questions appeal to me, because again, these questions are designed for the university to be able to find out, does a student fit this community? Now, if a student looks at a question for University of Chicago and goes, I can't face writing that question, then the question has also done its job, because it's a big warning sign to the student that they may not fit that community. I have a student this year I work with who was admitted early to University of Chicago, and her essay to one of the other University of Chicago questions this year started off with the line strings and things and strings and things and strings and things. She quoted the Cheese Strings advert, but she used it to enter into a philosophical and physics-based discussion on strings. Now that is quirky, it is academic, it is very geeky, and she looked at that particular question in Chicago and just ran with it and knew what she wanted to do. Many other students who I started working on New Chicago essays with this year went, you know what, David, this does not sound like the place for me. And that is where fit really comes into these college-specific essays. It also comes into the shorter questions that colleges ask. This is an extract from the Common App from Princeton from, I think, 2 cycles ago. And colleges will quite often ask you for short answer questions. So Princeton were asking then your favourite movie, your website, your favourite word. Who has a favourite word? Your favourite word. There we go. Again, trying to see what is the character of this student? Who is this person going to be on a campus? So when we're talking about fit, when we're trying to counsel students, when we're trying to give tools to help them understand this, it's some questions here that I like to ask them. What do you, or indeed don't you, want to study? What is that academic range of things that you're looking for? From that, what style of learning do you prefer? We've got 2 universities here which seem quite different, but if we could pick somewhere like, say, the University of Michigan on here, we could have had a completely different style of very large-scale education. I joke sometimes and say, if you want to be 500 men on their own up on a mountain in the Midwest, then there's colleges like that in the US. Because genuinely there are. If you want to learn on your own outdoors, doing manual labor half the day, then you can do that. What sort of people do you learn best with? Do you want to be with people who are all smarter than you? Do you want to be in the mid-range? Do you want to be one of the smartest people in the classes? Do you want people who work hard and play hard? Do you want people who continue their academic discussions constantly, even though they're not in class? Do you want people who are actually, I know I need to get a degree and I'm going to do my classes, but actually I'm really interested in other stuff at college? And then we've heard about urban environments, we've heard about outdoor education, we've heard about skiing. What else do students need when they're going to university? What else is going to give them that fulfillment that is going to help to that most? And if they just only feel at home on a set of skis bombing down a mountain, then that may be something they can get at university that's going to fit them. So all sorts of interesting stuff in there. And I'm putting this up here not so much to give more than a light touch sell of the services that we do at the university, guys, but also to say for the campus to the call, students do need to think about this as a 3-step process. This is a 3-step process I run through. I would encourage people to do it as well. Is to ask students first, where in the world do you want to apply? Let's really work out of these wonderful options, and 2 such on the call now. What is it you want? Let's really get out there and explore all your options. When too many students in the UK, I think, delve into this process, is it straight into the second thing, is they're getting ready. Even before they know where they want to go, they're taking test prep classes, they're doing an SAT and an ACT, and they haven't really worked out the first bit, and then they kind of think, well, that's sort of it, and then I'm just going to whack in some essays and it's done, and they don't put enough attention on. I think the first bit and the third bit are by far the most important bits, working out what you want out of your college experience in the US and really finding colleges that give you that. And then the last bit, actually making sure that every bit of your application works to your advantage. You really are honing your application to show how you fit the colleges that you genuinely do, is a fundamental part of that process. I'm going to leave the slide up here for those who don't have my details. We've got a few minutes. I think the chat is open if anyone would like to type in a question, and we can deal with a couple of questions for a couple of minutes. Whilst people might be typing questions into the question box, if anyone does want anything answered, I will just flag up a few more events that I'm running in this time when we're all living virtually now. Next week on Wednesday at 2 p.m, I'm doing a webinar on international hospitality management with Les Roches and Glion, with École Hôtelière de Lausanne and with Hotel School The Hague. And then the following week, Wednesday the 8th at 10 a.m, I'm doing a webinar on study in Central Europe with colleagues from the University of Pécs in Hungary and Masaryk University in the Czech Republic. For those who might follow me on Instagram, also next Thursday at 2 p.m, I'm doing an Instagram live chat with Dan Seneca from Bishop's University, where we'll be talking about issues for students holding offers in Canada in the light of the current complications we are all facing. And as ever, lots of resources available on universityguides.com for anyone who wants to share podcasts, webinars, or how-to guides with their students. Okay, I can't see any questions coming in. I think the chat is turned on, so that probably means that we've either covered everything or everyone is ready to get on to something else. So it only leaves me to thank my two wonderful colleagues for giving of their time and their knowledge so freely. So thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Lisa. And we will hopefully be able to see each other in person at some point very soon. Hope everybody is keeping well, and we wish you all the very best.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone.